The thing nobody tells you about discovering your husband is lying is that the truth doesn't arrive like lightning. It arrives like a slow leak. Drip, drip, dripping into the cracks of everything you thought was solid, until one Sunday afternoon, in the parking lot of a Kroger on Delmar Boulevard, standing next to a green Subaru with bird mess on the hood, your whole life liquefies under your feet. That was 3 weeks before I found the phone. And once I found it, I almost wish I hadn't. Almost. My name is Zawadi Osei Mensah, and I've been told my whole life I'm too perceptive for my own good. My grandmother Adeze used to press her thumb to my forehead and say, "This girl sees the bones inside the meat." She wasn't wrong. I clocked things other people missed. The slight hesitation before a lie. The way a smile doesn't always reach the clavicle. The breath a person holds when they're hoping you don't ask the next question. I was 29, an occupational therapist, and I had been married to Obinna Achebe Hartley for 4 years. I thought I knew him, like a song I'd memorized. I thought I could hum him in my sleep. The green Subaru was his cousin Tochi's, and Obinna had borrowed it 3 weeks prior to take some boxes to a storage unit while his own car was in the shop. No red flags in that sentence, none. But when he came home, his energy was a half-tone flat, barely perceptible, like a note played on a piano where the felt is slightly worn. I noticed. I filed it. I told myself I was paranoid, that I was projecting patterns onto noise. I had been telling myself that for 8 months. The first time something felt off was after his work conference in Cincinnati. He'd come back with a new cologne, something cedar and dark amber, and I'd made a joke about how they must have gift shops at conferences now. He laughed, but his laugh was half a beat too long, the way people laugh at things that aren't funny when they don't know what else to do with their face. 8 months of half-beat laughs. 8 months of a phone always face down on tables. 8 months of, "I'll be right back," that stretched into 15 minutes. 8 months of a man who used to reach for me in the middle of the night, now sleeping with an invisible perimeter drawn down the center of the mattress. Careful, so careful, never to breach it. But I want to be honest with you, because that's the only thing that still feels clean. I did not want to find anything. Finding something would mean my gut had been right. And being right about this particular thing is a kind of losing I couldn't afford. So for 8 months, I looked away. I stayed in my lane. I told myself that marriage has weather, that storms pass, that I should communicate more, that maybe I was the problem, that maybe I needed to be softer, warmer, less analytical, less sharp, less me. I had been quietly sanding myself down at the edges, and I hadn't even noticed until the morning I looked in the bathroom mirror and saw a woman I didn't recognize. Not because she'd changed dramatically, but because her eyes had gone dull in that specific way that only happens when a person stops trusting what they see. That was the morning I decided to stop looking away. I didn't go hunting. That part matters to me. I wasn't rifling through his things, wasn't reading his emails, wasn't pressed to his office door with a glass. I'm telling you this because I know how women get painted in these stories. Suspicious, irrational, aggressive, jealous. No, I was a woman who had been erasing herself in slow increments and finally stopped. What happened was a Tuesday. Obinna had taken his car to the mechanic again. A different issue this time. Something with the alternator, which fine. Cars are unreliable. And he'd asked me to grab his gym bag from the back seat before they towed it. His gym bag, he said. I found the bag, pulled it out, and when I tossed it over my shoulder and turned to walk back to my own car, the force of the swing knocked something loose from between the driver's seat and the center console. It hit the floor mat with a small, specific sound. The sound a phone makes. I stood there for a moment. Just stood there. 1 foot in the car, 1 foot on the asphalt. listening to the nothing that followed. There are moments in your life where some deep, mammalian part of you already knows, before your conscious mind has even assembled the question. My body knew. My stomach dropped 6 floors before my brain finished the sentence. It was a phone. Slim. A different model than the one he carried daily. No case. The screen was cracked along one corner in a way that suggested age. This wasn't new. This had been here, nestled between the seat and the console, for a long time. I stood there so long that a mockingbird landed on the hood of the adjacent car and started cycling through its repertoire. Cardinal, J, something mechanical. Like the world was just going to keep performing its absurdity regardless of whether I was ready. I picked the phone up. It was locked. Of course it was. But here's the part that cracked me open. The background image on the lock screen. It was a photo of his mother, Blessing Achebe Hartley, taken at a family cookout 2 summers ago. His mother, who I had spent 4 years building a careful, respectful relationship with. His mother, who called me my daughter every Christmas. His mother, who I had cooked jollof rice for on 3 separate occasions, each time trying to get the smoky bottom just right, because I wanted her to feel love through the work of it. His mother. I don't know why that detail hit me harder than everything else, but it did. Something about the intimacy of choosing that image as a shield, as if the phone existed in a world where I was the threat and his mother's face was the protection. I took the phone inside with me. I should stop here and tell you something about Obinna, because I don't want you to have a cardboard villain in your mind. He is, genuinely, a man who laughs loudly at bad puns. He coaches youth basketball on Saturday mornings, not because anyone asked him to, but because he showed up one day and never left. He makes the bed every morning, always his side and mine, even when we're fighting. He sends his mother money every month without being asked. He is not a cardboard villain. He is a complex, 3-dimensional person who did something that shattered me. Both of those things can be true, and holding both at once is the hardest work I've ever done. I sat at the kitchen table with the phone face up in front of me for 47 minutes. I know the time because I was watching the clock the same way you watch a wound bleed. Tracking, unable to stop, needing to know the extent of the damage. I could guess the passcode. That was the problem. I knew him well enough that guessing felt obscene and inevitable in equal measure. His birthday backward, his mother's birthday, the year he graduated, the number of his old basketball jersey number, 4 digits. His hands used to shake when he talked about his college days, that specific tremor of someone who'd loved something intensely and had to let it go. The screen opened on the 3rd try. I want to be careful here about what I say next. Not because I'm protecting anyone. That ship has fully sailed. But because there is a sequence to how information enters the body, and the order matters. The first thing I saw was not a woman. There was no woman, or at least, not in the way my body had steeled itself for. What I saw was a text thread, a long one, between Obinna and a contact saved as Mama B, his mother. She called him Sunday at 11:47 p.m.? That already felt strange. Blessing Achebe Hartley was a woman who believed that calls after 9 p.m. were a declaration of emergency. She had said that out loud, more than once, with the particular conviction of someone quoting scripture. I scrolled up. I want to tell you I did this calmly. I want to tell you I was composed, clinical, the way I am at work when I'm helping a stroke patient relearn how to hold a spoon. I was not. My hands were shaking and my vision had gone slightly narrow at the edges, the way it does when your nervous system is trying to prioritize central information and shut out peripheral noise. The text went back 14 months. 14 months of a conversation I was never meant to see. And here's the part I have been circling. The thing I have to tell you now, because it is the thing that changed the shape of my entire life. Not just my marriage, but the story I had been telling about myself since the moment I walked into that family. The texts were about me, not all of them, but enough. A sustained undercurrent, running beneath logistical updates and forwarded memes and check-ins about her blood pressure medication. A running commentary on me, on Zawadi, on the girl Obina married, on whether she was the right fit, on whether she was difficult, on whether she made him happy, on whether she had changed him in ways his mother cataloged with the precision of a forensic accountant. She's not warm like Adora was. Adora, his college girlfriend, a woman I had never met, never competed with in any space I was aware of, a woman who existed in his past the way all past relationships do, distant, contextualized, not a present threat. Or so I'd believed. She doesn't defer to you the way a wife should. Defer. The word sat in the middle of my chest like a stone. I don't think she respects our family's ways. She's very American about everything. Very American. I was born in Atlanta. My mother was born in Atlanta. My grandmother, Adeze, came from Ann Arbor State and built a life in this country through a ferocity of will that left marks on all of us. I am very American. I am also very myself. Those two things had never felt like accusations until that moment. And then, 14 months ago, his response. I know, Mama. I'm trying to figure it out. Trying to figure it out. I read that sentence 5 times. I set the phone down. I picked it up. I read it again. I am trying to explain to you what happens to a person when they realize that the quiet distance they've been feeling, the thing they've been blaming themselves for, the erosion they've been trying to reverse by becoming smaller and warmer and more palatable, was not accidental, was not weather, was not a phase, was a man in a parallel conversation with his mother, running a private audit of the marriage, and the verdict had been quietly arriving for over a year. I went and sat in my car in the driveway, not the Subaru, my own car, my silver Honda, with the small succulent on the dashboard that I've been keeping alive for 3 years and feel unreasonably proud of. I sat there with the windows up in the August heat, and I did not cry. I want to tell you I cried, because that would make the story feel complete, feel cathartic. But I didn't. I felt something colder and quieter than tears. I felt a reckoning. Here's what I know about reckonings. They don't feel dramatic in the moment. They feel like clarity, like the sudden lifting of a fog you'd stop noticing because you'd been inside it so long. I sat in my car and I thought about every time I'd softened a sentence before delivering it to Obina. Every time I'd second-guessed an opinion, every time I had made myself smaller in his family spaces, more accommodating, more careful, more diplomatic, because I'd sensed, correctly as it turned out, that I was operating under a kind of unspoken evaluation. And I'd been working so hard to pass a test I wasn't allowed to know I was taking. I thought about the jollof rice, the smoky bottom, the way I'd stood over his mother's stove for 40 minutes trying to get it right, not for myself, but for her, for the warmth of being received. And she had taken the food and smiled and called me her daughter. And then later that same week, she texted her son about how I wasn't warm enough. There are moments of grief that don't have a clean name. This was one of them. I went back inside. I put the phone on the kitchen counter. I cooked dinner, pasta, simple, the kind I make on autopilot, because I needed something to do with my hands that wasn't destructive. I ate alone because Obina had a late meeting. I washed the dishes. I fed our cat Thisbe, who ate with the focused indifference of someone who has never once worried about being perceived. When he came home, I was sitting at the kitchen table with both phones in front of me, his real one and the other one. He stopped in the doorway. There is a specific kind of silence that only exists between two people who love each other and are about to break something that cannot be put back together the same way. It's a loaded silence. It has weight and temperature. I've described a lot of things in this story, but I cannot describe that silence accurately. You have to have lived it to know it. Zawadi, he said. Sit down, I said. He sat. I didn't yell. I want to be clear about that too, because I know the script. The angry black woman script. The scorned wife script. The dramatic scene script. I've been handed those scripts my whole life, and I've been quietly refusing them for just as long. I was not angry in a loud way. I was something more dangerous than angry. I was certain. I was calm in the way of a person who has nothing left to lose from the truth. I asked him how long. He said he didn't know what I was talking about, and then he saw from my face that this particular deflection was going to cost him more than it saved, and he stopped. He started from the beginning, from the conference in Cincinnati, where nothing physical happened, but where he'd spent an evening talking to a woman who had made him feel, in his words, uncomplicated. And then he'd come home to me, to us, to the texture of our life together, and something in him had shifted, not toward her exactly, but inward, into doubt, into a conversation with his mother that became a place to deposit his uncertainty, week after week, until the uncertainty had grown into a structure. You didn't talk to me, I said. I know. You talked to her. I know. About me. He looked at the table. I know. And here's the thing I did not expect to feel, the thing that surprised me from underneath. I was not most hurt by the secret phone. I was not most hurt by his mother's assessments as much as they stung. I was most hurt by the realization that I had spent 8 months, maybe longer, making myself smaller in order to fit into a space that had been contracting because he'd allowed it to. He had not defended me. He had not said, in any of those texts, the things a partner says. He had not said, this is the woman I chose, and I will choose her again. He had not said, my wife is extraordinary in ways that don't always map onto what you're used to, and that is not a flaw. He had not said those things. He had said, I'm trying to figure it out. We sat at that kitchen table for 3 hours. Thisbe came and sat between us at some point, as cats do, occupying neutral territory with total serenity. We talked in a way we hadn't talked in over a year. Not the careful surface talk, not the logistical coordination of shared domestic life, but the real kind. Uncomfortable, interrupted, circling, necessary. I'm not going to tell you it ended neatly. Real life doesn't. What I will tell you is this. I walked into that conversation believing I was about to dismantle my marriage, and I walked out of it with something I hadn't expected, the beginning of an honest one. For the first time in 4 years, Obinna talked about what he'd needed and been afraid to say. For the first time in 8 months, I stopped performing for a judgment I hadn't consented to and started speaking from the place I'd been protecting. His mother called 2 days later. I answered the phone. I had thought about what I would say for 48 hours. I had rehearsed confrontation. I had rehearsed graciousness. I had rehearsed silence. In the end, I said something I hadn't planned. I told her that I had read the text, that I understood she had concerns about her son's happiness, and that I shared that concern, and that I thought it was past time we spoke honestly rather than in the space between messages. There was a long pause. Then she said, in a voice that had lost its careful coding, I didn't know you were so direct. I know, I said. You thought I was too American. Another pause. That wasn't fair, she said finally. It wasn't an apology, not exactly, but it was an acknowledgement, and an acknowledgement, I have learned, is where the real conversation begins. Obinna and I are still working on it. I say that not as a consolation prize, not as a we fixed it bow, but as an honest description of where we are. Marriage, I'm learning, is not a destination. It's a practice. And a practice can go wrong for a long time before you decide to do it correctly. And the decision to do it correctly is not a single moment. It's 1,000 small moments every day of choosing honesty over comfort and presence over performance. I am Zawadi Osei Mensah. My grandmother said I see the bones inside the meat. She was right. And what I've learned is that seeing clearly is not a curse. It's a responsibility. The responsibility to speak what you see. The responsibility not to make yourself small, to protect someone else from the truth of you. The succulent on my dashboard is still alive. I'm still unreasonably proud of it. If this story cracks something open in you, hit like. It takes 1 second and tells the algorithm you're here. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next.